Have you ever had a feeling that you couldn't put into words? I think the most ironic thing about doing a TED Talk about mental health is the sheer panic I'm experiencing right now. If someone were to ask me how I was feeling right now, I would probably find it pretty difficult to describe. So rather than trying to tell you in words, I'm going to use a different language, one that I know a little bit better. I think we've all heard that old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. About a year and a half ago, I was entering the final year of my degree, and unfortunately, something happened right at the start of that year which really kind of shook my confidence. And I was trying to find sort of a healthier way to cope with my mental health because I could see old habits creeping in, kind of like struggling with sleep, little appetite. I was experiencing a lot of panic attacks. But I didn't really know how to make sense of what was going on in my head, so naturally I went to the NHS to ask for some counselling, and I've been on the waiting list ever since. So I'll update you on that if that ever changes. I got sick and tired of just kind of like waiting to talk to someone and be heard, so I started creating to be heard. I started a visual journal in which I drew, made collages, wrote the occasional angsty poem, and this gave me the space to kind of express my thoughts and feelings in an entirely unfiltered way. I think that I've always kind of preferred drawing and making much more to writing and speaking, because growing up in a bilingual household, there was a lot of confusion around language translation and meaning, but I also grew up with an art teacher for a mum who taught me a universal language, creativity. I think there's a reason why you can go into a gallery space or go to a music concert or go to the theatre anywhere in the world and still kind of manage to understand something from it, and that's because creativity transcends borders. I was then kind of wondering if anyone else found creativity as therapeutic as I did, mostly just to be reassured that I wasn't going crazy. And I thought about whether or not there were any spaces available for people to go and make and share work that's about and for their mental health in the way that I was doing with this little book. So I met up with some friends because we couldn't find anything on any spaces like that. And we started to imagine what this little sketchbook might look like if it was a space. We thought about the need for this platform, whatever it might be, to feel safe and inclusive in its atmosphere. This was less to do with kind of like the venue choice and more to do with who we were hoping to invite in and the atmosphere that we wanted to facilitate. We thought about existing creative platforms and the tendency for there to be a lot of competitive energy and like adding a price tag to the work, so either through ticket sales or through kind of like selling artwork or whatever. And the fact that we wanted to avoid these things because they add a level of pressure for those exhibiting their work. And essentially we wanted them to be sharing work about mental health, and that's already like a massive ask in terms of vulnerability. So we came up with the concept of Insane, which is a multimedia arts platform with a strong commitment to social change and well-being. A space provided to the local community in Manchester for making and sharing work that focuses on the topic of mental health, as well as combating the reality of it. We quickly realised that we wanted everyone to feel welcome and encouraged to attend and to exhibit their work at our events. So we next focused on variety and diversity. I think there's still this misconception that a lot of mental illnesses only target specific groups of people and only affect them exclusively. And a really good example of this is that there's still an idea that the only kind of sufferers of eating disorders is young women, but actually increasingly it's becoming obvious that young men suffer with eating disorders almost as much as young women do. So we felt it was really important to break down these generalizations and show that actually anyone and everyone can suffer with their mental health at any time in their life, and this can manifest in any way. Mental health does not pick and choose gender identity, sexuality, race, religion, social class, or age. But these things might affect the way in which mental health either is or rather is not identified and dealt with. I'm usually very reluctant to single out groups, but it is really evident that young black men are much less likely to talk about their mental health in the same way that someone like I might. And so we hope that through actively seeking out, inviting and encouraging young black male artists to take part in our events, they will encourage their friends and audience members of a similar demographic to do the same. I'm not allowed any favourites, sorry. I'm not allowed any favourites, but my mum is, and her favourite performer from our first event was a local rapper called Saf, who uses his music and lyrics as a way for him to communicate and explore his own emotional difficulties, as well as just kind of like work through observations from the world around him. And as well as Saf, we've hosted the work of nearly 100 artists, musicians, performers, writers, poets, sculptors, you name it. And we've had an audience turnout ranging between 300 and 500 attendees per event. Through tickets and merchandise sales, we've raised over £3,000 for 42nd Street, Manchester, who are a local charity working with young people struggling with their emotional well-being. They provide free services. We felt that it was important to add in this fundraising element where we were supporting a charity that provides that one-on-one help for someone that's in a crisis. We can't provide that, so providing that money to them ensures that we're having a positive effect in someone's recovery. And to be frank, I think that campaigning for awareness just isn't enough anymore. We've got so many mental health campaigns that are politely asking for change, but we at Insane decided to be the change. A lot of these other initiatives largely focus their dialogue around statistics. And to truly fight stigma, we must humanize. But at the moment, individuals with mental health problems are largely being statisticized. I made that word up, it's not a real thing. But I think that taking the raw truth, the tear-soaked pillow, wearing long sleeves on a hot summer's day, the racing thoughts, the bags under the eyes, the reality of mental health into a number or a fact or a figure, it distances us from the reality of it. Rather than bluntly discussing the nature of mental health and the fact that it's different for every person. This focus on numbers isn't just in the newspapers and on social media, it's in the doctor's office too. If I had £1 for every time a doctor asked me on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling, I would be rich. And going back to that first slide of me looking all scared and sweaty, like, if I can't even sum up in a sentence or a couple of words or one word how I'm feeling, then how can I reduce that to a number? Emotions are such like vast experience, and so it's reductive to try and bring that into a single number. Pain, and especially emotional pain, it's intangible, you can't see it. And so what's the point in trying to quantify it? It's all relative anyway. Each person's experience of pain is different to the next because we can't assume that we feel the same as the person standing right next to us because we've had different life experiences. And these are the things that shape us and our minds and our experiences of the world around us. Why are we trying to communicate something that is disordered, illogical, and irrational with tools of order, logic, and rationality? Our interior worlds are subjective, intangible, and messy. This isn't just exclusively true for people that have experiences with real, like, diagnosable mental illness. We can often feel, when we're feeling overwhelmed with stress, it can often feel like the world's going to end or we're going to die. And even though that's completely illogical and not true, like, you're getting ready for a deadline and you're really panicking, and it literally feels like your entire existence is on the line. And of course that's not going to happen, the world's not going to end, but it doesn't make that experience any less real for that individual. And I think that we need to stop trying to quantify what that feeling is in numbers or limiting our expression of it to language. We need to start communicating it, and creativity is a brilliant way of doing that. Our attempts to communicate how we're feeling needs to be met in a more personal and human way. Often when someone reaches out for help in an institutional context, it's received with a sort of prescribed response. So if the word suicide is mentioned, then the panic button's hit. Anything less than that, there's like a safeguarding script. When we're seeking diagnosis, it can feel a little bit like standardized testing in school, seeking the correct answers to give the medical professionals in order to be deemed sick enough for the treatment that's actually needed, which makes no sense because everybody's experiences with mental health are so subjective and different. So why might two people sit the exact same test, get the exact same results, and therefore the exact same treatment, or more likely lack of treatment? Or why might one person be refused treatment altogether because they scored 1 point lower on the depressed test? I think that experience of being invalidated, it says to you, like, you're not sick enough, but if you get sicker, then we'll help you, which can have really fatal consequences for people suffering with self-destructive behaviour like eating disorders, self-harm and suicidal thinking. If they're refused treatment because they're not sick enough, that can lead to really catastrophic results. I personally think that language and numbers are limited in what they can communicate about our interior worlds because they're limited to logic, whereas creativity is far more personal and vast in what it can communicate because it has access to the abstract. We at Insane are not afraid of frank expressions of thoughts and emotions. We don't turn people away because they don't fit some kind of abstract idea of some made up idea of what's sick enough and what's not sick enough. Everyone's welcome to share any work that they want. Many artists expressed feeling like they had the space to share without needing to prove or justify themselves in what they were sharing. And I guess our intentions as an organisation are slightly different to the mental health services or the health services in general, because we're not trying to fix people or their problems. We're purely trying to give them a space to get their sometimes dark and scary, sometimes confusing and sometimes bizarre thoughts out in a way that's personal to them. What we are beginning to do with Insane and what we are hoping to inspire others to do is not only to inspire people to start combating the way in which mental health is talked about in society, but we are also trying to inspire a new narrative around art and the way in which art is used in the world. Creativity has gone from being an expressive need to being a marketable commodity, capitalism. And we need to fight this narrative that art should be sold to us as a luxury item. The arts have been there since the beginning of time. They've been there since way before capitalism even started. Think of cave paintings and the need for art and music and performance as part of rituals. Our ancestors used the arts for some function, and just this only goes to show that on some instinctive base level we need them. And I think the way to fight the narrative around art being this thing that we want rather than this thing that we need is to support existing and to start new creative community arts projects in which people are taught creative skills but also have the freedom to explore creativity as an expressive tool. Children are really clever. They instinctively use creativity as a way of dealing with challenging events. So, say a child has this difficult event happen, they might revisit and reflect upon that whilst playing with their toys or their friends. And I think we need to get back in touch with that creative resilience and that playfulness and therapeuticness that we experienced as children, and just forget about that whole thing of saying I'm fine when I'm not. And I think that getting creative is a brilliant way of getting in touch with that child again that has the space and the freedom to explore the things that are difficult through their play, through their toys, through their arts and crafts. I'm gonna end on a quote from Gustav Mahler, who was a musician and is Beyonce's 8th cousin. Apparently, Google says. And he said that if a composer could say what he needed to in words, they wouldn't try to say it in music. I think this can be applied to any kind of creative passion or practice. We need more spaces to explore that. Stop waiting to be heard and start creating to be heard. Next time you're feeling sad or lonely or anxious or overwhelmed, draw a picture, make a collage, hum a melody, listen to some music, write a poem. It doesn't have to be good. Just get that emotion out in whatever way feels right at that time. And if you're feeling super brave, share that with someone. Thank you.